Well, I was intrigued. We looked around the university for different places to build a piece. The museum is a home there. They had a front yard. There was a suggestion that might be the best place. You know, we have certain things like, can you dig in the ground? And that had a deeper soil there and not so much rock right underneath it. And also it had a walkway that was really unused. And so that gave me the idea of maybe we would utilize the walkway in that quadrant of the front yard and build a set of gate houses that set down the walkway. And so that's what we proceeded to do. These things zigzag back and forth down the walkway, and that adds to the structural integrity of the whole group. So one zag substantiates the zig. And so we've got the thing worked out. We've got 2 roofs on at the moment, and we're struggling mightily to get the other 2 roofs on in the next 3 or 4 days. You know, for sculptors, every day is a problem-solving event. So difficulty is just part of the game. You know, one day it's one thing, one day it's another. We're currently struggling with enough material. We initially gathered a huge quantity of material, but there was a huge leaf mass as well, so it hid the true substance of the gathering, and so we now have to go back and get more. In terms of why you might use sticks, I think artists just start doing things and then they make up the reason for them later. What you see in terms of stick culture is really, once you get to start working with it, there's a lot of historic use of saplings, and of course indigenous people use them. There are currently basket makers and furniture makers and ikebana practitioners and other people that use sticks. Of course kids, they're the ones that really use sticks, that they kind of represent or have a moment of the shadow life of our hunting and gathering past, and so a child knows that it's an imaginative object. It's a tool, a weapon, a piece of a wall. So there are all kinds of utility uses for kids. If they see a stick on the street, they definitely pick it up and start using it. So I think that when we ask volunteers to come and help us, they call back to their childhood and maybe subconscious time before current building practices, and they know a little bit about sticks already. I've been able to work throughout the United States and quite a few other countries. You get a foothold in a place for like Denmark or something for a few years, and then if you're not able to, if your schedule's too full and you start telling people no, then you lose that foothold, and if it might be then you get a foothold in France and do a bunch of pieces there and then lose that foothold. Been able to work a lot around the United States. We just came from Utah State, and we're going to work in Provo at BYU next. So for whatever reason, we have one right after another in Utah, but I've been able to work in different places, meet different people. Part of the work is that there are no studio doors to close. You can't hide. The work we do is in public, and so that allows you to get a good sense of the community, and you're always talking to people. If it's on campuses, it's students. If it's in a park, you're talking to the local folks that live around the park. You know, if it's working at a museum, it's their staff, and there are museum goers that you tend to talk to. At each place we're using volunteers, so those volunteers also are embedded in the community. You get to know people from that community. So I'd say what keeps you going really is the moment that you think of something new, and then also that you get to meet a lot of people from that community and discover what they're like and the similarities and differences in various communities.
I'm taking a wonderful opportunity to work with the artist. I mean, it's a rare opportunity. I think it really enriches the art experience. I think art is such an important part of life, and I think it's often ignored. and I'm very involved with the art community. I am a docent at the Frist Art Museum in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were just saying we always get a chance to talk about the art and engage people's critical thinking, but we never get a chance to work with an artist, or even rarely meet an artist. So it's really, it's just a great opportunity.
Probably I would say there is a bit of learning curve in playing with sticks. You know, there are a lot of closet stick gatherers out there, so they know a lot about sticks already. And probably as people come to the project, they have predispositions to think they know how the stick will work and how they will deal with it. So I always allow people to try and work before I give any advice. So they're a bit more willing to take the advice that I have. Generally, it's simple advice. Nobody has to take the responsibility to build the whole piece. That's my job. So I've tried to break the jobs down in small units so that it's understandable. Do this work on this wall, do this. And we have various waves of work. The first is a structural wave in which we kind of build a structure on which to work. And it's kind of like building a canvas and then drawing on it. The second phase is kind of an aesthetic phase of building up a surface that looks really good. It's more of a drawing style. And the third is the cosmetic, which we're about to start, which is to erase things you don't like by putting little sticks over them, and then also trying to organize things that for a better view, so that some sticks move a certain way, it carries the eye, and you feel like you understand the surface better. These sculptures are intended to last 2 years. That is, if there's a slight bit of care with them, as opposed to a big steel sculpture or something that can pretty much stand on its own for a century. These works have to be babied a little bit, have to have the sticks stuck back in. There's always the enthusiastic children that decide to take the sticks away and build their own fort next to it, or they'll help you by sticking sticks in a very precarious way, so you have to debride the thing once in a while so don't get an eye poked out or something. But I always think that the temporary is a good way to go in some instances, because objects have ideas embedded in them, and so the public looks at that object and eventually accommodates themselves to the idea. It's great if at a point that piece comes down and somebody else gets to present an idea, so that particularly in, say, in a university community where ideas are premium, that you would not just lock onto one idea and hold it forever, but that you would renew the possibility and see different things and new ways of working. That's true of sculptures. A lot of times if you ask people on a college campus if they know where the sculptures are, or if maybe there's a sculpture right next door, you say, you know where a sculpture is? And I've never seen one here on campus. It's because really the idea has been accommodated, and then subsequent passers-by just don't really, are not very, they really don't see it anymore. So if you take a sculpture and move it to a new site, you'll see that it reinvigorates the object, because people in that site haven't seen it. I like it that in a way it redirects the viewer to the more essential experience of sculpture, and that is that it's how it makes you feel. It's not really about reselling it or buying something, it's really about how you feel when you see it. And I think a good sculpture is promotive. It causes lots of personal associations. It gives you a place to start. It's relevant in your own life. So for a stick sculpture, since we all have passed through childhood, and oftentimes we think, well, why I'm cutting these down off my bushes? I wish I could use them in some way that you might think of a bird nest you've seen in the morning, or an indigenous tribe you visited when you were on a trip. But the idea that you would have some starting points, maybe the first kiss under a lilac bush, things that you remember about the woods, or about simple shelter. And we've all got the Garden of Eden in the back of our mind, and so you think, well, Adam and Eve must have been out there somewhere building something. Maybe they were using sticks.